Hi, everybody. This is Brittany, and I want to thank you guys for joining me for my weekly training session. Today, I'm going to be going over reinforcement and punishment. A couple things to start out with. This is more of a fundamentals of reinforcement and punishment, not so much implementation. There's a couple reasons behind that. First of all, you have to understand the fundamentals of reinforcement and punishment before implementing them. And also, it's very important to know the function or purpose of the behavior prior to implementing a reinforcement or a reinforcer or a punisher for behavior. So we'll go ahead and dive in. As always, I have published the PowerPoint presentation for you guys, so that will be available for you on the Facebook group. And I apologize for doing a little early today. I figured if I did it at 3 o'clock rather than 4, you guys wouldn't have to worry about me running out to try to go catch the school bus today. So let's, what is a reinforcer? So a reinforcer is a consequence of a behavior that is either, a lot of people consider it a positive thing, but a reinforcer is just literally the consequence of a behavior where something is added opposed to taken away. So what that means is immediately following the behavior, either you give praise or a tangible, which is like a toy or a piece of candy or something like that. So that's what a reinforcement is. There are a couple different kinds of reinforcement. To be specific, there is positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. One thing that people kind of get confused on is the word positive and negative. That's not a good versus bad situation. It's literally just, it's math. You add something or you take it away. So what a positive reinforcement is immediately following a behavior, something is added or given to increase the future probability that that behavior will happen again. This has to be immediately following the behavior, and it could be things such as food or drinks. Toys are another option as a reinforcer. And verbal praise or attention also work very well. So things like tickles, hugs, and cuddles tend to work very well as well for reinforcers. So an example of a positive reinforcement scenario would be your child is asked to clean their room. He does it, so he's rewarded with a star on his sticker chart for if you're doing a chore chart. Another example of a positive reinforcement, and you'll see me come back to this one for some more examples, but another example is giving a child, so you're in the grocery store, and I think a lot of us have experienced this, and your child is screaming in the line for the candy bar. So you give the child the candy bar and the screaming stops. So you have just given positive reinforcement for the behavior of screaming. And the reason I say that is because the likelihood that the child will scream again in the future is higher because they've gotten a candy bar for doing it in the past. So what is negative reinforcement? Negative reinforcement generally includes having something uncomfortable or aversive prior to the behavior. And that adversive or undesired stimulus or thing is taken away to increase the likelihood that the behavior will increase. So you wanted, it's something that's going to be annoying to you or something you really just don't want to have. It's also going to be, again, it's not bad. The negative part of negative reinforcement doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's being taken away. So an example of negative reinforcement is when you're in the car and let's say you put the car in drive and all of a sudden you hear that beep, 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 and it's the bell ringing at you because you forgot to buckle your seatbelt. Well, you're going to buckle your seatbelt to make that beeping stop. So that is an example of negative reinforcement. It is increasing the likelihood that you will buckle your seatbelt in the future when you hear that bell. Another way is, so on a hot summer day, pretend you don't have AC, which I don't know who doesn't have AC these days. But say it's a hot day, so you want to cool off your house a little bit, so you open the window to let some of the breeze come in. So you're taking away the heat, hopefully, by opening the window. So that would be another example of negative reinforcement. Because you're increasing the likelihood that in the future, when it's hot, you're going to open that window. Another example is the kid in the candy bar. So let's say we'll go back to our scenario. We said your kid was screaming in the grocery store line, so you give them the candy bar and they stop screaming. Not only did you positively reinforce screaming, but you also used the candy bar as a negative reinforcer for yourself. You wanted the screaming to stop. That's the aversive or undesired stimulus. So you give the candy bar, which is the behavior, and the consequence is the screaming stopped. So you are relieved by the fact that the screaming is not happening. So the likelihood that you will do this again increases. And the reason that I bring up this different scenario twice is because sometimes we don't realize that behaviors that we don't want to see, we're actually the ones reinforcing those behaviors. So like the example with the candy bar, we don't want the child to be screaming, but by giving them that candy bar, we have just reinforced the behavior. So they're probably going to scream more often to gain access to something like a candy bar or attention. So not everything we reinforce is purposeful. We can accidentally reinforce behaviors like, I know that a lot of times that we want to make a child do or stop doing something. So we tell them, stop doing that. And then when we think we are scolding the child, sometimes they actually like the attention. So they're gaining attention, which might actually work in reverse of what we're trying to do. So if you see where what you think might be punishing a child is actually causing the behavior to increase, you might be reinforcing the behavior unknowingly. So that's one thing to look out for. So what is a punisher? So a punisher is the opposite of a punishment is the opposite of reinforcement. We are adding or taking away something to decrease the likelihood that the behavior will occur in the future. So that could, and as with reinforcement, it needs to be immediately following the behavior, and it must be equal to the behavior. So over punishing something could actually have an adverse effect to the behavior and to the person. Also, punishment and discipline really aren't the same thing. Punishment is to decrease behavior, whereas, I mean, in ABA doesn't really use discipline as a term, because discipline, it's just one of those broad terms that cover a lot of different things that just kind of doesn't really necessarily mean anything for us in ABA. So there are, like I said, with reinforcement, there are actually two different types of punishment. There's positive punishment and negative punishment. And again, positive means adding something, and negative is taking it away. So it's not good versus bad. And I will say that a lot, I'm sorry, because a lot of the times even I get confused sometimes, and I forget, oh wait, no, that's not positive punishment, that's negative reinforcement. So it gets kind of confusing sometimes for us. So positive punishment is adding something to decrease the future of that behavior. So again, needs to be immediately following the behavior. And sometimes what we think might be punishing to a child, as I said before, actually could be reinforcing. So not everything works as a punisher for everybody, and it's the same with reinforcement. Not everybody likes the same things. So whereas you think, hey, that's a great job might be reinforcing to you, it could actually be punishment for another child. So before we even implement these, we really need to know what types of things are going to increase the likelihood or decrease the likelihood of that behavior for that child. So if they don't like touches or tickles, that could actually be punishing a behavior that we want to see. So an example of positive punishment is something like scolding. So you say, or your child throws something at you, and you say, no, that's not okay. And if it does in the future, remember, it has to affect future behavior. If in the future the child doesn't do that behavior again, then that's a punisher or punishment. Another type of positive punishment is called overcorrection. So that's making the child repeat the correct behavior over and over and over again. So you know how they used to have you write something on the chalkboard over and over and over and over again, making you think that you're going to learn that that's the proper behavior. An example that makes me think of is, a lot of you guys know I am a veteran. When I was in the Air Force, we had to clean the latrines, the bathrooms. One of the times when the bathroom was clean, somebody, I don't know who, left the toilet seat down, and our instructors wanted all the toilet seats to be up to prove that they had been cleaned. So as punishment, positive punishment for us, we had to line up I think there were like 30 of us, all 30 women had to line up, raise the toilet seat, salute it, say, I apologize, sir, I will never let you down again, put our salute down, lower the seat, and the next person would go up and repeat the behavior, raise the toilet seat, salute, say the statement, put it down. And we did this over and over and over again until we knew never to leave that toilet seat down after cleaning it again. Punishment works. Doesn't always have the best effect on people, but punishment does work. See, and there's also negative punishment. So again, negative punishment is taking something away after the behavior occurs to ensure or to decrease the likelihood of future behavior. So a lot of times it's going to be taking away something. So like a reinforcer. So we call that a response cost. So you see a behavior you don't like, so you take away, say, the tablet, or you take away, it could be anything like attention. So a response cost is taking away something that is desired. So other examples for negative reinforcement are timeout from positive reinforcers. So that could be a timeout because they're not allowed to do whatever, the activity they want to do, or when your kids are older, or grounding, because I know I got grounded a lot, and most of the time it was grounded from the phone. But I don't want to talk about that too much because I might show how old I am by telling you guys that I used to use the cordless phone or the corded phone. Another example of negative punishment is called planned ignoring. This type is something that I actually use quite a bit, but I also make sure I pair it with some sort of positive reinforcement. So planned ignoring is ignoring a behavior you don't want to see in the hopes that it will stop. So what I tend to do is, with my son, he likes to repeat certain phrases over and over and over again. So I try to ignore that behavior. And then when I see behavior following that I want to see, I praise him. But again, it has to be a reinforcer that your child will like. So if they don't like praise, don't give them praise. If they just want to be alone and that works better for a reinforcer, give them that. But I always try to pair that with some sort of positive reinforcement, usually a social type of reinforcement, like so attention, tickles, cuddles, something of that nature. Another example is I've seen children who try to gain your attention in inappropriate ways. So they'll like smack you in the arm, hey, 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 hey. And they'll keep doing that because that in the past has got them attention from a teacher, a caregiver, or something like that. So by ignoring that behavior, I have put it on what's called extinction, which means it will stop. And I am no longer reinforcing that behavior. But once the child does something to gain my attention that's appropriate, like sitting down and say raising their hand, then I'm like, oh yeah, hey, how are you? And I give them that attention that they were looking for. So reinforcers and punishers can fall into two different categories. They can be what's called conditioned, or which means they're learned. So things like toys, social praise, or in the case of punishers, social disapproval. They can also be unconditioned, which is another way of saying they're instinctual. They're things like water, food, sleep that we need. Even air is a reinforcer. The breathing, taking in air and breathing will increase the likelihood that you will breathe in the future. So which should you use? Well, honestly, it really, again, depends on the function of that behavior. If you punish a behavior that you want to see, and it can be by accident, then you're probably going to make that behavior stop. Or if you see a behavior, or if there's a behavior you want to stop and you're not applying the right reinforcer or punishing procedure, you can actually cause that behavior to increase. So before any type of punishment or reinforcement's done, you need to know, again, the purpose or function of that behavior. One thing I would really, it's very highly suggested in ABA to use reinforcement over punishment whenever possible. So with the reason that is with punishment, you're just stopping a behavior. But with reinforcement, you can teach the behavior you want to see. Also, reinforcement builds trust between you and your child. A book I've been reading, which I highly recommend to you guys, is called What Shamu Taught Me About Life, Love, and Marriage. It's a really fun book, and it'll help you guys think more about behavior management than you would really expect. Animal trainers use a lot of the same principles that we use in ABA. So I would highly recommend reading that book. But in the book, she talks about how reinforcement and punishment act as a deposit or a withdrawal from a bank. So by feeding in reinforcement, you're filling up that tank. But any type of punishment is going to be taking away from that cash that you've built up. So it could cause mistrust between you, your child, or if you're using it on your animals, Again, sorry, let me backtrack a minute. Also, when it comes to reinforcement, it's really more motivating for somebody to be reinforced than it is to be punished. I mean, if you're going to be punished for everything you do, you're really not going to want to try anymore. So if you reinforce behavior you want to see rather than punish behavior you don't want to see, there's a likelihood that that behavior you're wanting to see will increase. And it also kind of cancel out that behavior you don't. Punishment does work, plain and simple, but if it's not immediately following the behavior, it could be, you may not be punishing the correct or the behavior you're meaning to. So if you wait too long to implement a punishment, you could be punishing the wrong thing. Also, punishment can have some unintended consequences. Sometimes it can cause aggression in children. So I know I've swatted my little boy on the bottom, and he swatted me back. So that was an unintended consequence, because I guess he thought, well, if mommy can hit me, then I can hit. So we don't swat anymore. It can also cause fear between you, or for the child. You don't want them to fear you. You just want them to do appropriate behaviors. Rather than punish that bad behavior, I would really recommend reinforcing a behavior you want to see. And again, punishment can cause mistrust between you and your child, or again, like your animals. So just make sure that if you're using punishment, it's absolutely necessary to the behavior. And if your child is enrolled in ABA and you're using a punisher, make sure that you talk with your BCBA and understand exactly the procedure, how to implement it correctly, and talk to them about a possible, unintended results from using punishers, because that might be something that might make you change your mind about using that punisher. So for helpful links today, I actually didn't do my normal, read this. I did a lot of YouTube videos. These YouTube videos, some of them are actually from The Big Bang Theory, because The Big Bang Theory actually has done a really great job about talking about positive reinforcement, and also talking about positive punishment versus negative reinforcement. So I would really encourage you guys to watch those if you get a chance, and I will, like I usually do, I will copy and paste those right into the text box here. The first one video on there, I think, is Sheldon and everybody using that, what they said was negative reinforcement. So watch it, super fun. And also the positive punishment one, or excuse me, the positive reinforcement one was really fun to watch. So most of my resources, I have my references here, come from the Cooper text, also known as the White Book or the ABA Bible. I don't know if you guys can see that. So if you guys are interested, definitely check it out. I want to thank you guys for watching me again. And I hope I've helped you guys out. If you like the information that I've shared today and you learned something, go ahead and share that with everybody. And if you know somebody who could benefit from these, go ahead and invite them to the group, and we'll share some more information. Also, next week, I'll be going over how to take data at home. That was the runner-up to the poll that I took last week for what information you guys want to see. And later on, I also plan on talking about more about how to implement reinforcement and punishment into behavior change plans at home. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much again. Take care. Have a wonderful week. Goodbye.